Welcome to episode 3 of the VSP podcast. We're going to be talking about how to improve your first step. We're going to go over 5 different principles. It's always something that gets brought up in assessments when athletes message us. It's all about speed. So we're going to dive into that today. Last week we spoke a lot about baseball, strength and conditioning, and the programming that goes behind that, filling those buckets. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what we do baseball-wise, feel free to give that a listen. We have our baseball summit coming up in November, where we're going to have 8 amazing speakers, including myself, people from the MLB, local organizations, high school coaches, parents, surgeons, manual therapists. We're going to have a lot of speakers here to go over what, the average 12, 13, 14-year-old needs to do in order to manage workload, improve their body mechanics, and just overall feel better and hopefully reduce their risk of injury. But without further ado, let's get into it. So as I said, today we're going to be going over improving your first step. And we're actually, in our recovery room here today. We're starting to put it together. We got our nice reclinable chairs. We got our Normatex over there getting set up. Nice little TV. So this would be a great room for our athletes here to, relax, recover, and hopefully improve their body from their hard workouts or practices and whatever. So we're excited about that. As I said, we're going to be going over a lot of what it takes to get faster. Now I'm going to go give you my 5 principles of what I use in order to improve an athlete's speed. When I try to keep it as simple as possible, I've learned from people that have done it for many years and have had success. Guys like Tony Holler, who's super simple, or utilizing like Altus, their mechanics, things of that nature. That again, it's all very simple. Yes, data is important, but at the end of the day, the first principle says, in order to get faster, you gotta sprint. Far too many times kids try to find that the special sauce, or the equation, or the tool, whatever it may be, in order to improve their speed. But at the end of the day, you just gotta sprint. I like to say, make sure you're exposing yourself at least 2 to 3 times a week to max effort sprints. It's one of the first qualities, or attributes to go as an athlete. Based on the research that's done, if you're not sprinting at high intensities, you're going to lose it pretty quickly. So make sure that, like I said, 2 to 3 times a week, spending at most 10 minutes a week doing it, and you will definitely be in a good position to maintain that quality. And it doesn't really need to be all that far. Like at most, 30 to 40 yards, I'd recommend, and you'll quickly be able to improve that. Next up, talking about acceleration mechanics. Obviously, in order to improve your sprinting, you need to make sure that your efficiency is there. And that comes with moving better, right? Getting your body to move in a way that allows you to, go faster, utilize the ground forces, and sequence your body, properly. We go over a few things here. First is posture. Making sure athletes know what quality posture is, right? Like keeping the shoulders directly over the hips, not running with the super extended or super flex spine. What is the correct foot position when you contact the ground? Acceleration versus top end speed, very different. A lot of kids stumble out of the gate. And why is that? And it's mostly because they don't have good posture. They don't know where their foot is in space. And all that's really important in order to get faster, especially when you're talking about that first step. Shin angle as well, right? We talk about a positive shin angle where the shin actually is tracking towards the ground. So there's a common misconception is you got to run low, right? And yeah, you do have to be low, but the angle of your body is not dictated by, you bending at the torso, right? Or rounding. It's actually dictated by your ability to drop your shins down. You ever see sprinters in track, they use blocks. The reason why they use blocks is so they can lower that shin angle and drive against the block to go out. It's a horizontal motion, right? We don't want to pop straight up, right? We want to drive out. So again, posture, foot position, where it is in space, and then those shin angles. It's going to play a huge role in your ability to get faster. And there's a lot of different skill work, especially when it comes to posture. Skipping is really good. It also helps with, your foot positioning. For shin angle, I like to use the wall or the sled because it drives more of a exaggerated position to teach the athlete, especially those 12, 13, 14-year-old kids that barely, know how to move properly or just going through puberty and they have all these awkward motor control changes. It's a really good tool to teach those positions. And then, of course, you can go into arm actions, right? Sequencing the body properly, especially a lot of, field sport athletes or athletes that, are holding equipment like, lacrosse, field hockey, or ice hockey. Sometimes you get some little bit of awkward arm movement. And we want to make sure that we're getting that contralateral motion. Right. You see a lot of the, kids when they're doing their A series or skipping, whatever, you see ipsilateral movement where the right leg and the right arm come up together and then they're going through that and it just doesn't look right. So those are things that you want to fix early on, and it will help with the sequencing of the running. And oftentimes when kids aren't thinking about it, they do it properly, but sometimes you have to coach it into them, because of whatever bad habits they've created, along the way. So mechanics are important. Keep it really basic, right? And always look towards, what is wrong, from neutral. Right. If I look at, a neutral runner, that has, quality posture, foot positioning, a good leg recovery, things of that nature. All right, compare it to that and try to break that down, extrapolate, so you can give the correct skill work, right? Because it's not a one size fits all oftentimes, and a lot of coaches just give a blanket program and hope that it's going to work, but you got to assess it, know exactly what's wrong, so then you can coach it properly and speak to that kid, the way that they need to be spoken to, because again, sometimes it's also what is good enough, right? Like, sometimes I have a kid do like a flying 10 and they're, easily, sub 1.2, right? And their mechanics aren't great. So I don't want to make too many crazy changes, especially if they're right before their season or whatnot, that may, hinder their sprinting. So, sometimes you have to just pick maybe one or two things, work at it slowly and not overwhelm that athlete, especially when it comes to, improving their mechanics, which it's tough. Sprinting is a very fast motion, so it's hard to slow it down and truly get the athlete better. And that's why we always recommend, kids getting started with, speed programs early on, 11, 12 years old. They can start exposing themselves to different, simple drills, like the A series and marches and things of that nature that will help build and groove those patterns for the athlete. Number three, build force into the ground. So, we understand we have to actually sprint to get faster. We have to improve our mechanics. And then we also have to get stronger. Yes, by sprinting, you will get stronger. You will get more powerful. But sometimes athletes need a little bit more, another piece to the puzzle, which is not the most important thing, but it's definitely an accessory, thing that you could do in order to help accelerate, or lack of a better word, the person to get faster by, getting stronger, right? Increasing the lower body strength, and power. We utilize a lot of different plyometrics. Like a broad jump is awesome. Vertical jump's great and whatnot, but it doesn't have as much translation over to sport. Where the broad jump, that in itself has a lot of translation over to that first step, because it gets you into that exaggeration angle, so you can explode out forward. I love bounds too, especially, forward diagonal bounds where you're expressing force, and projecting those hips, again, has a lot of relation to cutting, change of direction, things of that nature. And then for lower body strength, utilizing a ton of unilateral lifts, especially those 12, 13-year-old kids that, may not have the stability or mobility or get down to a squat, which is definitely not the most important thing. Simple body weight, split squat holds, 10, 15, building up to 30 seconds at a time. If you could do that, you're certainly going to get that athlete stronger. And then eventually, as they get ready, okay, let's add a little bit of load. Maybe starting with the goblet, then 2 dumbbell, then maybe progressing to the barbell once they get a bit older, and earn the right to do those lifts. But again, like the strength training piece of it is definitely pretty low, on my list of what I'm going to give to that kid. I'm going to prioritize, their speed mechanics and the plyometrics before I start crushing them with any sort of strength work. So just know like what is most important and prioritize that, in your programming. Number 4, train the skill year round. This kind of goes to what I was saying earlier on, where if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So kids don't have who aren't sprinting often, I would say at least 2 to 3 times a week, they're not going to see the progression, and they may actually get slower over time. So make sure that you're exposing your body, especially you high-end athletes, to sprints 2 to 3 times a week. It's really, really important. And then prioritize your mechanics and everything that we stated before, and good things will happen. It's always about training with intent, right? Like I say it all the time when kids, I see them going through the motions here at my facility. I'm like, you're not going to see the benefits unless you actually think about fast. Like when I'm setting up, whether it's a half kneeling sprint, a push-up sprint, reactionary drill, whatever it may be, I need to think I'm going to move as fast as possible, because I guarantee you're not doing that. You're not thinking, I got to move fast, I got to be strong, I got to be powerful. That should be the thought process. That's how you truly get better, take that next step. You see those kids that are working their butts off in the weight room each and every day. It's because they have that mindset. It's not easy, right? Not every time, not every rep you want to give it your all, but I guarantee it'll compound over time. Every rep of every set of every exercise, you have that intent, it's going to get better, especially when it comes to sprints. Try as hard as you possibly can, and you will see explosiveness improve. You will see your acceleration, your top end speed, and everything else start to come together. So please train with intent. And then lastly is recover. If we're going to give it all we have each and every sprint, we got to make sure that we recover after each one. There's a whole bunch of rules, thumbs, and tables and charts and whatnot. But I always tell kids, rest for as long as you think you need to, right? So if I'm doing a flying 10 or something alike, and it takes me, 1.3 seconds, 1.2 seconds, whatever it may be, give yourself minimum, 2 minutes. Take your rest, breathe, catch your breath, and give yourself even a little bit longer. Once you feel like you're ready to go, give yourself a little bit longer, because it's not only physically that you need to be firing all cylinders, it's your nervous system, that needs to recover and go again, right? And it takes a little bit, especially when you're doing max intense sprints. So again, recover. And that goes for after your sessions and, in between practices and things of that nature. Make sure that you are relaxing your body. You're giving an opportunity to, reset, and whether it's hydrating, eating properly, fueling, getting enough carbohydrates in, which are super important for our athletes. It all plays a role. It's always, like I say, it's a comprehensive, holistic approach, to being an athlete. But if I'm gonna really try to crush one part of this, is that you just got to sprint, right? Like weightlifting is great, and then working on mechanics is great and everything. And trust me, I know that will help. But sprint, just go out into the track for if anything else, and just sprint. Right? Take 15, 20 minutes, warm up, get your body nice and ready to rock, and then just take 5 to 10 minutes. Run 6 to 8 quality sprints where you're really giving it all you have. Rest 2 to 3 minutes in between. Repeat that 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 months. Retest whatever drill it is, flying 10, 40-yard dash, 30-yard dash, whatever it may be, and I guarantee you will get faster. So improving your first step isn't just about one drill or one cue. It's about combining, the mechanics, the strength, the speed practice, the right doses with the right intent. Do right, and you'll feel faster in just a matter of weeks. Trust me, it will happen. As always, if you have questions, you can shoot us an email at info@vsptrain.com. You can shoot us a follow, VSP Training. We're always here to help. If you have questions or specific topics that you want us to discuss, leave it in the comments below. We'd be happy to go over it. And I appreciate you listening in, and we'll see you next week.